It's not how you start, it's how you finish. That's how the saying goes. It's not how you start, it's how you finish that matters. Well, you know the name Usain Bolt. Any of you who follow the Olympics, or even if you don't, you've probably seen it in the news. He is regularly described as the fastest man in the world. The fastest man who ever lived, actually, is how Usain Bolt is described. He's about 6'5". He's from Jamaica, and he has this really long stride. He's got this unique body build that allows him to almost effortlessly, of course it's not effortless, but it looks like that, run through, almost glide down the track. Well, tonight, those of you who will be watching the Olympics, he runs for a gold in the 100 meters, seeking to become the first runner to win 3 consecutive gold medals in the 100 meters. Now, the thing about Usain is that he doesn't especially like to train. Who does, right? Practice, whether it's for a gold medal or for your piano recital, is boring and repetitive. Who likes to practice? We just want to be in the game, in the competition. Of course, without practice, though, even the fastest man in the world will lose the race. So he practices. The other thing about Usain is that he likes to run only as fast as necessary. He's preserving his energy, saving his fragile body from the punishment that this 100-meter race, when you run as fast as you can for just under 10 seconds, it's very punishing on your body. I don't know if you've been watching the Olympics, but if you watch these runners, especially when they slow it down, you see the impact of every step on their body, and especially their face, the flesh of their face is just going up and down. And the other thing that I notice about these runners is that they know so well what they're doing that as they get near the end, they sort of slow down because they don't need to push all out just yet. They're waiting. Well, what we don't really know about Usain Bolt is just how fast he can really go. Maybe we'll find out tonight. 8 years ago, in the China Olympics, Usain Bolt became famous. That's when he really came onto the international track stage, as he appeared to, virtually gliding again, run this 100 meters in what was then the unheard of, shockingly fast 9.69 seconds. That is amazing enough. But what made it even mind-boggling more was that the last 15 or so meters, he slowed down to pretty much a jog. And ever since, people have wondered, well, how fast could he really have won if he had run through the finish? They're left wondering because he didn't run through the finish. He won, but he didn't finish as well as he could have. A year later, 2009, he did still better, setting a world record. Then he set another record in 2012. But tonight he goes for that triple gold. And in one interview I was reading about in Sports Illustrated, he was saying he mostly forgets about his past performances, but he remembers that China one. He says other people remember it, but I think he remembers it especially. And he says, other people say about me, that was amazing, and they wondered what I could have run if I had run through the line. What could I have run if I had run through the line? And I think Usain is saying, I wonder now what I could have really done had I run through the finish. I don't know if he's going to set a world record tonight, but I'm guessing you will see Usain Bolt strain through the finish line. Finally. He wants to find out what he can do if he perseveres to the end of the race. What can happen for him if he finishes well? Which leads me to wonder, what about you? What are your plans on whether you will finish well your faith walk in your life? Are you planning to finish the race of your life in a way that you can say at the end, I ran through the finish? Or do you want to just sort of coast in? Well, what the writer of Hebrews is encouraging us to do is this. Let us run with perseverance the race that is marked out for us. I love that verse. God has marked out for each of us a race. Now, my race is not the 100-meter dash. It's not a running race at all, because despite the deceiving appearance of my athletic build, I didn't mean that as a joke. No. Okay. Despite the appearance, the truth is I have a bad knee that prevents me from running any further than up the steps to get another cup of ice cream so I can watch Usain Bolt run or Michael Phelps swim. That's my job. But you got to persevere in the race that God has set out for you. The race that our author writes about is one that takes a lifetime to run. Actually, it's not a 100-meter sprint at all. It's a marathon. And the point of participating in the race that our writer says here in Hebrews is not to win, but to finish. To finish well, to persevere. The point is to finish well, to run through that finish line, to be running when you get to the end. So the race we run is one that we run with the legs of faith. And that's what these chapters are about. I especially appreciate Frederick Buechner's definition of faith. This is what he says. Faith is the word that describes the direction our feet are moving. All right? Back with me here. Stop thinking about your lunch and what you're watching on the Olympics. Here, listen to this definition. This is really good. Faith is the word that describes the direction our feet start moving when we find that we are loved. Faith is the direction our feet start moving when we find that we are loved. We're following the one that loves us. Faith, he says, is stepping out into the unknown with nothing to guide us but a hand just beyond our grasp. You get that picture? Faith is stepping out into the unknown with nothing to guide us but a hand that is just beyond our grasp. So that's faith. And that's what we run this race with. Our writer tells us that we can run this race marked out for us if we keep a few truths in mind. First, we're not the only ones that are running this race. He gives a lot of examples. If you read all of chapter 11, you know, there's like a year's worth of sermons about all the different examples of faith and this hallmark of faith in chapter 11. I just used two in the excerpt that we read from today. But Israel, one he gives is this, that Israel is passing through the Red Sea on dry land. And the other is that the walls of Jericho are falling after a great march of people around the city. Most of you, probably all of you, know those stories. In all these other examples, look, here's the thing. You need to be encouraged in your walk of faith. Read chapter 11, look up the names, and then find a Bible that has a little concordance in the back, and look up the names of all of those people and read their stories. They are wonderful examples of hallmarks of faith that will carry you through your times of discouragement. Anyway, I want to know with you today, I want you to think about, is your race one that's calling you to take a step into a riverbed, I suppose, really, right? Where the storms are raging on either side. You know, God doesn't promise that we're not going to encounter the Red Sea. God doesn't say there's not going to be an obstacle that won't, pop up in your life. Obstacles are going to be there. There's going to be a sea you have to cross to get to the other side. But also know that by faith, as the people of Israel were able to cross that river, so will you be able to cross that river in that race marked out for you, whatever that obstacle is in your life. Or maybe you're facing a huge wall in your life. Maybe you're looking at this, huge wall and you're saying, how am I ever going to get through this next part of my life? How am I even going to get through tomorrow? I've got this huge wall there. And then God says to the people of Israel, well, here's what you're going to do. You're not going to take one sledgehammer to that wall. You're just going to march around it 7 times. You know the story. Maybe that's what God is telling you to do. Something that doesn't make any sense to you. I should go live in Greece for 2 years? Yeah, you should go live in Greece for 2 years. I don't know what walls you're going to knock down, but you ought to go. And so she's going. And that's what we all are called to do. That's her race. That's the race that God has marked out for her. But you have a race too. You have a race that God has called you to do. We have, I don't know what the average age of our congregation is. It's going down. But we have a lot of people, especially in the summer when a lot of our younger families are camping. The average age of the group here is probably pretty high. Well, what I am saying to all of you, and I include myself in this category, retirement from work doesn't mean retirement from the race. The race of faith goes on. And I credit so many of you who are involved in that race. And I encourage you to stay involved in the race right through the finish. Let's see how fast you can really run if you run all the way to the finish. And that's the purpose of these examples. There's so many more. But we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses who tell us the truth. I'm going to take just 30 seconds. I want to divert. Footnote. It's our 125th anniversary. And Rich Tempest is our guy who's in charge of our archives. And so he's working. We have a little committee. But here's something we ought to do, Rich. Rich. Right over there. Okay. What you ought to do, you look at these windows here. In memory of Mr. and Mrs. G.J. Borningkoff, charter members. Well, who in the world are Mr. and Mrs. Borningkoff? We ought to find out. Because we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. Here's Howard Mewson. Let's find out who Howard Mewson is, and Mr. and Mrs. John Colsty. You see, we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses right here in our own church that we don't know. These are people who said they want this place of worship to be here and be beautiful so that God would be glorified. And let's find out who these people are. Someday you're going to be the great cloud of witnesses that somebody else is going to stand here in 125 years if Jesus doesn't come first and say, I wonder who, and maybe it'll be your name. I wonder who that was. And I'm not talking about giving money. I'm talking about who are the people who, and if you can give money, if you've been blessed to give money, give money. But that's not the point. My point is, whatever your gift is, who kept the children's ministry alive? Who kept the food ministry alive? Who kept the women's ministry going? Who kept the media? You see, that's the point. It's not just the ministries in this church. It's sending out missionaries like Bev, like Don. That's what it is. You who are on consistory, you're part of that great cloud of witnesses. You're sending every action you take. Tomorrow night we're going to take an action, right? The message that we send is going to go on for 125 years more, Lord willing, if Jesus doesn't first return. What do you want the message to be? You see, that's the great cloud of witnesses that we're surrounded by. All right, back to what I wrote. In order to finish well, we have to throw off the things that hinder us. This is a great image. You've seen how the athletes dress, right? I mean, not much. But I don't think it's just for TV ratings. It's because they're throwing off everything that hinders so that they can compete without anything stopping them. And our author is saying, so throw off everything that hinders. That's the part that's not even sin. The first thing is to throw off everything that hinders. You can't run in some big robe, some flow. You can't run in your bathrobe and finish 100 meters and win. You've got to throw off the things that hinder. So John Calvin makes this point when he writes, he says, look, that's not saying you got to throw away things that are blessings from God. If you've been blessed with whatever you've been blessed with, enjoy it. But if it's hindering your faith walk, throw it off. Because then it's hurting you, it's not helping you. And then he says, and throw off sin. Now, notice it's not S-I-N-S, sins. This isn't some morality tale. He's saying throw off sin, S-I-N, no S on the end. Because sin, the big capital, what I would say capital S sin, is intended to be the direction of your life. The mark you're trying to hit, or in sin, the mark you're not hitting. It would be like if you watch archery, the guys who, they're always like 3 degrees off. Because they're entangled, now they're not entangled in sin, but that's what sin is, missing the mark. So he's saying, get rid of the stuff. You don't earn your salvation by doing good things. That's a really important. You're saved by grace through faith. We do good things because Jesus saved us already. But throw off sin, not because it's going to get you saved, but because you've been saved, and because that's how you're going to be able to finish well. Get rid of the pride. Get rid of the doubt. Get rid of the lust. Get rid of the greed. Get rid of the anger. Get rid of the sloth. Get rid of the sin that entangles us. All right, skipping to the end. I want to tell you about one other Olympian, Eric Liddell. Now, you know his story from the famous movie Chariots of Fire. What I want to tell you about Eric Liddell, though, is not about his Olympic victory. You all know that story. Because of his Christian beliefs, he doesn't run one race, he runs another, he wins the gold medal anyway. That's the famous story. The not famous story is this. I'm going to tell you how he persevered to the end. He was a missionary to China. After his Olympic success, I don't know, it's not like today where they put you in the Wheaties box, but whatever it would have been in Scotland in the 1930s, that's what it would have been. So anyway, he doesn't go back to Scotland. He doesn't reap the rewards of his success. He goes back to China to be a missionary. All right. So he's been this great witness for God. He's set this, great example. The world is in awe of the fact that this man so honors God in this race. So here's what happens to him for this man who honors God in this way. He goes back to China. World War II. He's in China, and the Japanese invade China. And the Japanese come to the mission where he is, and they take him and all the missionaries, and they put him in a Japanese internment camp. So he's like a prisoner of war that is not fighting. And they know this is coming, so he sends his wife and his 3 daughters back. They go to Canada to escape the invading Japanese. But he stays. So he's now in this prison camp setting. Then, after that, he starts having trouble concentrating and so forth. Turns out he has a brain tumor. So there he is in this Japanese internment camp in China without his family with a brain tumor. Now you're thinking, well, probably there's going to be a big miracle healing, right? No. He's got this brain tumor. He's in the hospital, dying, alone. This man who made this great testimony of faith for God. He's dying in the hospital. The Salvation Army band in the area comes twice a week to play hymns outside the hospital. And they're parked out underneath where his window is. And Eric sends a note down with the nurse and says, "I'm dying. Would you please play, 'Be Still My Soul, the Lord is on my side'?" It's to the tune Finlandia. You know it. Da 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 da. So you can sort of hear the Salvation Army brass starting to play it. And you can picture Eric, the servant of God, dying alone of a brain tumor, singing these lyrics, "Be still my soul, The Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide. In every change, he faithful will remain. Be still, my soul. Thy best, thy heavenly friend, through thorny ways lead to a joyful end. That's running through the finish. Friends, there's a great cloud of witnesses who are cheering you on to the end. They have made it through the storms, so can you. They have conquered the imposing walls, so can you. You can be a champion who receives the only reward that matters. It's not how you start, it's how you finish that matters. May your faith carry you all the way through the finish line of life, right into the arms of Jesus. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.